to speak after the food, so. And I have to follow up with everybody else that's there. Well, thank you everybody for coming. It's really been a long time. This is my first time to actually attend one of these events. It's always something, as everybody knows. Life is busy, okay? But I wanted to connect my story a little bit with what happened in my background and how I actually became, I'm a technology executive, so how I became that, and So I believe that the chaos is an opportunity in disguise, and the chaos is kind of the topic of my little speech. A lot of these demons that were deep inside of me. I actually deleted probably 40, 50 pages of the book because I went too deep. Because that wasn't about me, it was about my wife and our story, not necessarily about me. And it was my healing process that I kind of learned. And I used that, and it was called When the Yellow Ants Disappear. Okay? Although I'm not a professional writer, I was able to kind of successfully write that book somehow and really enjoyed it. Which brings me really to the story. In the beginning of the 1992, just before the war started, a few months before that, I was standing on my window and I started paying attention, and I saw that the yellow ants are not there anymore in our house. Because before the war, we had yellow ants in the house all the time because it's like a natural pet, okay, in Bosnia. And I noticed they were not there anymore. So my mom was next to me and I was like, did you notice that yellow ants just disappeared? And she said, well, this is really interesting because I remember before the Second World War started, and she's from Užice in Serbia, she said, I remember that they disappeared from our house as well, just before the war started. And I was like, interesting, And then in April of 1992, on the 5th of April, when there was the big demonstrations in Sarajevo, I went over there with some of my friends, and we got separated during the sniper fire, during that, you can see on TV. So everybody just kind of ran. We were able to kind of somehow escape, and we caught the last train out of Sarajevo towards my town. And this is a story I don't believe I told pretty much anybody, so since we're opening up, I guess, it was a good chance to say, they snatched us somewhere around Ilyich, I think, from the train, a few of us, young people, took us to a high school and put us in the basement. I think it was a basement, it was we go down. Later on, find out it was a basement. And since it was a late afternoon, then the dark came, and they keep coming and taking people away. You could hear screams, and nobody was coming back. Now, they didn't shoot, at least that's what we heard. A lot of noise, take somebody else, a lot of noise, disappear. And I trained martial arts probably for a few years, 3 times a day, no break, multiple hours a day. And I was very well trained at the time. So we figured, there was like 10 of us left in the basement. I kicked the door a few times, the door gave away, and we just ran into the dark. And there was this guy, Suleiman, whatever his name was, we just followed him, and somehow we came to Visoko. Some of you are from Visoko, I heard. And somehow I made my way to Zenica. And with my coach, we joined the Special Forces of Police for a short stint. And then that's how I, came right into the chaos. So that chaos of that particular moment taught me that you have to take an action. Even if you're completely paralyzed, even if you don't know what to do, you just have to keep moving forward. And the martial arts taught me some kind of a discipline and ability to push through some of these difficult moments in life. And that was just the first one that I experienced, as a young kid, 20 years old maybe. When was that? Maybe even younger. 19 actually, that was 1992, so yeah. So there was a day before war started in Bosnia. War started on like April 6th, I believe. This was a day before that. And it was a very brutal 12 hours or ish before we were able to take an action. And I had no idea what happened with other people at that point, and we turned around, and somehow luckily we escaped unnoticed. Okay? Didn't pay attention much to it at all, because we Balkan man is supposed to be tough, right? So, okay. You just kind of bury this over and you move forward. Okay. Only to find that every single piece of the chaos that you experience throughout your life will come back at some point in your life. You just cannot hide everything within yourself. It's hard. My friend told me not to cry, but you never know. So, and I'm not leak proof. But we chose the opportunity at that point. And from chaos, you can always find the opportunity. And early in my life, I started seeing patterns and started seeing the way and strategic ways of how to solve the problem and how to run towards that. And sometimes I scare my bosses and scare people because I see 2 steps ahead than everybody else, which is sometimes, really a problem from time to time, as we know. But again, in that moment of chaos, you can choose. In this case, was potential death, or you can just choose life and just keep moving forward. And that's what we chose, right? And then, little stint in Special Forces of the Police taught me discipline and the chaos. And I left the police when we took over the town, and these big guys told us to pull back. And then as soon as we pulled back, they forced us to go back in for no reason. A lot of my friends died. One of my best friends got injured. And that's where I decided that's not the way to, So I went into the humanitarian work. I started working with the International Medical Corps, raised up into the ranks pretty fast, and soon enough I was running the program. And we established a lot of, and Elvin Manjo-Peter actually came with me here, was as well with them. I just want to recognize him right there. We established vaccination programs throughout the Bosnia, in my early work, and then later on we established emergency rooms throughout the Bosnia and Herzegovina. And what shocked me really when I came back, just a few years back, when my wife's mom was sick and went to the hospital, and I ended up passing by that emergency room in my hometown, and I walked in, and as soon as I took a first step, it was exactly the same way that I left it, 20 years something later. I was shocked. You would expect there would be something different, and that really, really, really shocked me. And then from International Medical Corps, it was a lot of chaos, right? We went. I've been either through the Army or through the International Medical Corps, or through later on I established Save the Children in Bosnia program. So I fully built it from ground up. We built a lot of things for the kids, and a lot of programs for the kids. And I've been through, from Tuzla all the way down to Mostar and Šantić Street. I was there at the very, very high moments when there was toughest fights over there. I was one of the first guys that went into I don't know if you guys know Vitez. It's a small place. There was a small place within the Vitez that was Bosnian Army. It was 500 meters by 500 meters. I was one of the first ones to actually enter that area, and it's one of those life-defining moments when you walk in and you see some of these things. So I've seen everything, right? And what shocked me the most was I was walking to one of the valleys in Bosnia, and then there was this lady with 2 beautiful kids, and usually they used to plant vegetables because there was nothing else, during the war, right, as a food. And the kids were running around and going through my legs, and while we were passing by, it was just kind of fun, And as soon as I passed by the building, the grenade fell directly and completely destroyed it. So I've seen everything, but that was the hardest part in my life. Just because of those kids, those 2 beautiful kids, which I have 2 kids of my own. So from that chaos, still didn't prepare me for the United States. I met during my humanitarian work Sarah Kent. She's from New York. She introduced me to Patrick McCarthy, and somehow Elvir, that lived next to me, building next to me in Zenica, we ended up not from anywhere else, but directly from Zenica to Zagreb and then St. Louis. And in 1996 January, when the embassy were closed because there was a government shutdown, if you remember, at the time. So we had to wait for a little bit, and then we ended up in January 13th here in St. Louis. And when I came in, I stayed with the host family close by over here in St. Louis. And they did not prepare me for Schnucks, which is a grocery store here in St. Louis. When I walked in, it was like, woof, everything was there. I couldn't even believe it. It was like, oh my God, this is great. And the only thing that I actually craved was the white bread. I actually craved white bread, only to find out what the Wonder Bread was. It's a different story, right? But that, that kind of prepared me for various different things, And then I remember the second day in the United States in the class, I was sitting in the class, and I guess they were cleaning upstairs or something, and there was the exact same sound of the grenade, same sound. And I just jumped under the table in the middle of the class. And everybody just turned. And I turned and I looked and I just froze for a second. I was like, oh my God, what am I doing, right? And I didn't even think, it's just an instant reaction, right? And then I saw the guy under the table. And I was like, huh. So I went to introduce myself, and of course he just came maybe 3 months before me from Sarajevo. And that's how we met, and that's my first experience in the United States. That safety, that I forgot what the safety was. And the worst part when you're in the war is there's the moment when you can think as young, you're invincible and everything else, right? And you find out what there is. And when you actually don't care anymore, that's the worst part. It's probably part of the PTSD, it's probably part of the stress, probably who knows what, right? I mean, we can talk with psychologists about many of these different things. But that's the moment where you just don't care. They're shooting the grenades and you're just walking. It's just like a normal life. And it's kind of hard to explain. And there's that moment, and when you come to the normal environment, it's very hard to adjust, right? Sleeping patterns and everything else. So all of that chaos was preparing me for, what would come here. And when I came to the United States, I was like, I honestly actually went to the police and said, I want to be a special forces police, I want to be a sniper. And they told me I got to go to all these hoops, and I was like, I don't think so. So I went to computers. So, yeah, and same thing happened to my wife. When she came in, I told her, you can study anything. The United States is huge. You can just study whatever you like. And I said, except maybe art. She finished fine arts. Yeah. It's beautiful. Yeah. So that's why I realized, that living in survival mode, and we forget how to actually live normal. And that's what, St. Louis kind of helped. And the big community here helped as well, okay? But then again, for a long time here, even if I was going to school, I went to a community college here, Patrick McCarthy, thanks to him, I was able to at least support me for the beginning. Later on, I had to fight for myself and finish Webster University somehow, and then University of Phoenix for my master's degree. And all of these schools, and to give you, not necessarily to boost myself a little bit, but I had a 4.0 GPA top down from the beginning to the end. And my high school was harder than any of the classes I took here in the United States, by far. So it was non-challenging for me, it was easy for me for some reason, and it just flew. Okay, and I failed the placement test, by the way, in community college when I came in. So just kind of give it a perspective, But to give the credit to the Bosnian Student Project for believing and seeing the opportunity somehow, and giving us the opportunity to actually show our true potential, which is a very important thing for everybody. Community here in St. Louis that benefits from us, as well as the community, immigrants community that I used to help here in St. Louis, and so on and so forth, right? My host family, I also want to thank her. She, accepted me a little bit, and it was a little bit awkward because it's a different culture, as you know. But one of the things she noticed about me was that it was a very creaky old house, so you cannot walk from the second floor all the way down without at least creaking. And I was able to actually navigate the whole house without even sound, and she was very amazed at that. And she was trying to teach me American culture, which was very important, and I learned that really well, that I should not wear Speedos when I go to the pool. So, cultural differences is, I guess we learn the way. So the Bosnian Student Project gave me the foundation that I was able to jump from and kind of achieve something for myself and for my family. My wife came in 2002. She's my true north. She was able to finally, when she came, my PTSD started kind of show, and for me to first understand the elements and the depression and everything else that was deep and that I didn't even know. It's kind of hard to recognize it, and that's the first step to recognize it in order to understand that. And then when I started writing the book, I truly understand, we were talking about earlier about, how do we open up and people that don't want to share these stories. The stories are buried so deep inside that I don't even know how to express them. I don't even know how to tell them. The writing was helping me, but it was helping myself because I deleted some of this stuff. To just kind of take this outside of me and to start a healing process. And this is 30 years later. I came 1996. It's almost 30 years later that I just started to heal. That I understood that I'm starting to heal. Okay? And just like, in the special forces and the lifetime decisions, I use that chaos, and I'm thriving in chaos. That's why I'm working for the startups and early companies, because I like the chaos. Okay? Where I can show my coolness in the moment, which freaks people out, obviously, and what we call that agile methodology in technology. Agile methodology is just the way that we approach projects and in simplistic terms. And these abilities to see patterns in the chaos help me navigate where I am today. I have behind me probably multiple interesting changing projects in mortgage tech and financial tech, and that I'm really proud of, and that I would not be able to do without going through the chaos and learning that stuff, and with the Bosnian Student Project that actually gave me the opportunity to make that first step to my future. And one thing I forgot to mention is that before I came here, my father had a heart attack, pretty massive, 60% of his heart was destroyed. And then he just died in 2019. So he survived all of that, thanks God, And then I got an invitation to be for the karate team of Bosnia and Herzegovina to go to the World Championship in Malaysia, Kota Kinabalu South in Malaysia. And it was my family, my actual dream that I used to work for really, really, really hard, and I was really, 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 really good for my life. And somehow my mom told me one day, don't worry about the fact you can't change anything, you gotta go for your life, and somehow I came here. I still think that whether it's a good decision or not. The World Cup would be really nice to attend, to have something behind me, but at least I was a member of Bosnian team in karate. It's kind of proud, one of the proud moments of my life. So people ask me, how do I go back from war-torn Bosnia to the technology leader in America? The skills are the same. What you learn through your life and what can you apply, you just have to know that you have to push through the hardest thing that you have. Whether it's a project, whether it's a, some kind of a manager that's just, wherever you work, there's always somebody, right? Navigating the psychology of the people, sometimes that little training from special forces about psychology helps out to navigate these people, but I don't use it too often, you know. I just don't apply this technology. I use a lot of AI, I use a lot of programming. You know, I write a lot of code, but I'm also chief technology officer, which means that I'm actually managing the whole department for various things. I've been in this company for 10 years, brought it from I was employee number 1, and we are now becoming a leader in this space again, just like I did with the previous 2 companies, which I'm again proud of, you know, not necessarily that company, but the achievement of what we did as an immigrant, as a body student project, offshoot a little bit, you know, I didn't get full paid school like everybody else, I just had a partially paid school, but again, somehow we made it. The foundation is the most important, because without the foundation you don't have anything else, right? So, and what's beautiful also, I've been teaching at Heristote University for 16 years now, which is just down the street over here. It's a historically black colleges and universities, and it's been very challenging. I'm not there for the money, I'm there for the students, because I recognize the opportunities and the predicament that those students are coming from. And I just told a story last night, you know, I had a student that, and I work with a lot of Vietnamese and everybody else, so they use different languages and how they put words in and sentences together, so you can understand when they start talking, you know, and you know, our professor was giving us examples earlier about that. But I had a student that would write a whole paragraph that mean nothing. They mean nothing. And you have to help those people. And when I say mean nothing, it would be like, you know, there's a computer and the sky is blue, like something like that, like completely like nonsensical sentences and stuff. And it's been very, very difficult. And every time I come and they tell me their stories, and you know how students, they have always excuses, and they have, you know, parent died, you know, grandpa died 5 times, and those kind of things, you know. But these kids they are in predicament. They have a lot of issues, right? At home, a lot of issues, and the same thing that we experienced when we came here, right? And just telling them some of my stories through the class and teaching them to some of the stuff, so they can see that there is always a light, that they, you know, from the chaos they're in, they can take that next step. Those are the first college attendees from their families, right? It's very difficult. And I feel, you know, very connected to them, and it's very hard sometimes when you see that the whole system is made against them. Even the whole educational system is made against them, because they just cannot make that next step. I've been fighting the Heristote University, trying to help them move that next step and put them in more entrepreneurship, because as the community becomes stronger, they can help each other, right? St. Louis is a really bad example, because there's a lot of old money here, and they don't help each other, they keep them tight. I mean, it's very hard to penetrate that circle than any other cities. So, you know, it's important that somebody has to open that pipe, and it's been a fight. And those students that I used to help, and they used to do really good projects, end up working with the Wells Fargo. There's nothing wrong with Wells Fargo, right? But again, they had so much opportunity, and then they just end up with another work, which, you know, it's a breaks my heart. So from that basement story that I told you to the boardrooms that I'm right now in America, you know, it's all because, first of all, Patrick McCarty, because he believed in me at that time, and my friends that supported me, and my host family that supported me, the family that supported me later on. And to everybody here, you know, we are the living proof that immigrants can help the communities, because everybody has, you know where you are, and you know how you help the communities, and what are the leadership, and the chaos can become code. That's basically my story today. So, and for those that you guys that supported it, right? I mean, these students, as you can see, some of them came back to Bosnia, some of them stayed here, but we are the foundations of the immigrants, that we can help each other and continue helping each other in some of the stuff. And just remember that chaos is just an opportunity. There's always, you know, when you see something is completely negative and down, there's always an opportunity, you know, to do something else. Even when the patterns of the life, as today, and the political system is where it is, there's always an opportunity and chance to do something different and better. So, and for me, I just don't solve the problems. I hunt that complexity. I thrive in that complexity. And I never miss some of these things. So, yeah. And again, at the end of the day, just like my mother predicted, just before I left Bosnia in December, late December 1995, when Elvir was actually there in my house the next morning, I remember that story that we were talking about, the yellow ants. And I went to my kitchen and I saw the first ant in 4 years. And that's where the war actually ended. For some reason they came back. Some people tell me from that story that it's a prophetic story. It's not a prophetic story, I don't know what it is. It's just, my mom had the same story and I experienced the same story. And who knows, a small sign of that chaos, can always find its way back. And lastly, really, this whole thing, writing the book and where I'm at right now in my healing process, I started writing another book. I ended up writing a 700-page of historical fiction about the exodus of the Muslims from the town of Užice in 1862, only to find the same conditions, same patterns, same suffering that we forgot for our people. And when we forget, and we forget our history, then the graveyards will answer for us like they always do. So that's why we can't forget it. And then after I finished in English, I wanted to translate in Bosnian, and I was talking to the professor earlier. I wanted to translate in Bosnian, then I started translating, and since my language is kind of separated, because I learned English from English, so my vocabulary, not necessarily vocabulary, but the meaning is a little bit different. I figured out that I want to translate it in the old Bosnian of 1862, and then find some kind of a balance between the language of that time and the modern language, and see if I can connect somehow into the story of the pain that we started, and then also that it's a readable for the today's generation in Bosnia, because you don't want to write something nobody will write. But again, it's 700 pages, it's a long book. I wrote it for myself actually, as a healing process for myself, because my mom is from town of Užice. She's actually Serbian, so that's even worse. And that's for 20 years that story has been in my head, and I was finally able to put that on the paper. And I put a lot of personal stories there, a lot of my friends. There's a lot of friends that converted to Islam. There are Croatians, for example, that I kind of incorporated some of these stories into the book very neatly, so nobody can recognize it. But it's so from the small student, from that basement, to the whole chaos of the war, to the whole chaos of the immigrant life here in St. Louis, we became somebody. And I want to thank my friend Elvir for coming with me, and the moments, and I finish with this, and the moments in the St. Louis Community College when I did not have any money at that time, right? I mean, we just, we're passing by multiple times by the vending machines, looking at the sneakers. We had 25 cents a day, and waiting to the last moment when you're really, 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 really hungry, cheat your stomach for that day, eat one sneaker a day, and move on. And we did that for a while. And somehow we survived. And when I needed him the most, he was there for me as well. So, Elvir, thank you so much, because true friends are really hard to find in life, and we all want it. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate it. I didn't cry, but I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.